I'm going to share you the secrets on how I created this panoramic sky animation using Photoshop and After Effects. This technique is similar to how Makoto Shinkai made his cinematic sky animation, so if you want to learn more about that, make sure to stick until the end. I always wonder how those breathtaking and cinematic scenes in Makoto Shinkai's movie was made. I spent a lot of time watching some behind the scenes and documentaries about his animation process, but I never really had the chance to learn his actual technique until I found out about panoramic image. If you're not familiar with panoramic images, it is basically a super wide image that captures everything around you in a scene. Think of it like a 360-degree image where you can see everything from left to right and top to bottom, similar to Google Street View. And this kind of panoramic setup is super useful because it lets you move the camera in different directions. And when this is used in animation, it makes a scene more cinematic and realistic. And I think this particular scene in the movie Your Name was made using a panoramic image. Although I'm not 100% sure about that, but looking at how the camera moves and distort the clouds in the sky, I believe they use a panoramic image to achieve that effect. But even if Makoto Shinkai didn't use that technique, I still think that the method and tricks that I'm going to show you in this video is super valuable, especially if you want to make your own animation. So before anything else, just a quick heads up. The panoramic option in Photoshop has been discontinued in newer versions, and the last version that actually had it was version 22 and below, so that is version that I will be using now. But even if you don't have Photoshop version 22, you can still follow along and create your own panoramic animation because we're going to use After Effects for the animation anyway. The reason why we need to use an old version of Photoshop is because it is the last version that supported the 3D tool, which will help us to visualize our illustration in a 3D environment. But nevertheless, you can still create a panoramic illustration with any Photoshop version. If you want to use the same file that I'm going to use, you can download the project file for free by visiting my Gumroad store in the description below. Alright, let's get started. Enable for us to create a panoramic image, we need something called an equirectangular grid. And this is what it looks like. The curved lines you see here at the top and bottom are the distortions that happen when you wrap it into a sphere. So looking at it now, this horizontal line in the center of the grid is our horizon. The top section of the image is the sky, and the bottom is the ground. And the curved lines you see here are the perspective lines, but in a distorted appearance because, like I said earlier, this is a flat version of a sphere. I know this might be a little confusing to look at, but it will make sense if we turn this grid into a panoramic layer. Again, this option is only available on recent version of Photoshop, so if you cannot see this option, you can just skip this part and go straight to the actual painting. So enable for me to turn this into a panoramic layer, I'll go here at the top and click on 3D and then choose spherical panorama and click this second option that says new panorama layer from selected layers. And now it will turn my flat layer into a panoramic layer where I can orbit and look around like in a 3D environment. And this is very useful when I start my drawing later on because I can visualize my flat drawing in a 3D environment without leaving Photoshop. But again, like what I said earlier, even if you don't have access to this 3D view, you can still follow along and get the same results like the one I showed you in the beginning because we're going to use After Effects to do the actual animation. For now, we will use Photoshop to paint our background environment. I know I might sound like a broken record, but I just want to make sure that you won't give up at this point because you don't have access to this 3D option, okay? So now, I'm going to start painting using this grid as my guide. But before I do that, I will go here to the Layers panel and double click this spherical map option. And what this does is it opens up a flat version of the grid in a new tab where I can do my actual painting. The reason why I need to do this is to have the flexibility of painting my scene on multiple layers, which the 3D layer doesn't support. So now I will move this flat layer window into the right side and this 3D layer window onto the left side so I can see them both at the same time. I'm going to start painting a simple field of grass with a mountain on the horizon and some clouds and stars in the sky. I will move the grid on top of all my layers and set the blending mode to multiply so I can clearly see the lines while I paint. And that way, I'm always aware of where the horizon and the perspective lines while I'm drawing. I'm going to fast forward this painting process because this is very long, like almost 2 hours, and I don't want to bore you with a long video, but if you want to see the whole painting process, just click the link on the description below to watch the whole thing in normal speed. For the field, I'm using a simple grass style brushes with different variation in sizes. Nothing too fancy. You can use your own brushes to create the grass field. But if you want to use what I'm using here, you can download the project file in the description below. What I like about this method of painting using a panoramic layer is that I can easily view how my painting look like in a 3D environment without using a 3D software. I can easily go to the left window where the 3D view is located and choose the move tool to orbit around the scene. Even though I can see my painting here in 3D view, I won't be able to export it as a 3D animation since Photoshop is not designed to do that. Although I can use the timeline to create a frame-by-frame video animation, but I won't recommend doing that since it is very time-consuming and it only has a limited functionality compared to using a fully featured animation program. Okay, so you might notice that I followed the perspective lines when painting the grass. And although I don't need to do that because grasses are growing in a more scattered direction rather than a straight line, but I just want to make my painting process a little bit faster by following the guide instead of guessing where to put it. You don't need to follow what I'm doing. Actually, you can just paint all over the ground and still get some pretty good result. What I like to do while painting the grass is to add different color variations, like some areas have darker color, especially the area near the edge of the canvas. And for places that are further away and near the horizon, I use a light color and make the size a little smaller to create depth into the scene. Okay, I'm all good with this, so now I'm going to paint some mountains in the horizon. One thing to note is that it is advisable to make your canvas bigger to make room for all the details you want to add. The size of my canvas now is at 4K resolution and that is enough for all the details I will add in this painting. But it's important to remember that the bigger canvas is, the more resources your computer needs. So for some old computers, you might experience that Photoshop is starting to get slow and a bit unresponsive, so make sure to always save your file just in case it crashes. And now, for the sky, I'll start by adding a darker color at the top to create a more convincing transition. I will also add some dark cloud textures to fill up the sky and to create more variation. And now, using the lasso tool, I'm going to quickly create a shape for the cloud and fill it with a color. Even though it is not necessary, but I like to draw the clouds to match the perspective line. I don't need to do this because clouds are organic and they float all over the place without following a specific line. But I just want to make this painting quick and easy for everyone to follow. That's why I will just follow the line. I'm using a softer brush to smoothen the edge of the cloud and to blend it even more. Sometimes when I paint the cloud, I always feel like it doesn't look good. I mean, I don't think the way I paint the cloud is comparable to the clouds that I see in anime or other artists. There's something in the way I paint it that doesn't look quite right, and I'm still figuring out what is it. And I'm not the best at drawing clouds, and I would love to learn how to properly do it. So if you have some tips for me, please don't hesitate to comment down below so I can improve my skill. I'm done with the big clouds, so next is I will add some small chunks of clouds at the back to add more texture to the sky. I'm going to use a very light color to avoid getting too much attention since this is just meant to be a texture in the sky and not a prominent clouds. I'm also going to add some cloud trails to create movement to the sky and to make the scene more dynamic and interesting. I will also add stars to the sky and add more cloudy texture to improve the scene even more. Actually, I think I need to adjust the size of the clouds a bit since it is quite big when looking up in the sky. Also, I think adding more patches of clouds could help add more elements in the sky because right now it looks a bit empty and really plain to look at. I have a free cloud brushes that you can get on my website, and it consists of some basic brushes that can help you create clouds faster. But actually, if you made it this far in the video, I'll give you the extended brush pack that I normally sell on my website just for free. Yes, I can give it for free just because you've made it this far. So if you wanted to have it, just type in clouds in the comment section and I will give you the link to download it for free. I think I'm satisfied with how this is looking, so now I will export this into two separate files. The first file is the clouds, so I'm going to hide everything except the clouds and save it as a PNG. And then I'm going to hide the clouds and save the background as well. Now that we're done with the drawing part, I'm going to show you how I've made the Meteor shower animation in After Effects. But before anything else, we need a free plugin called Saber from Video Copilot enabled to do this effect. You can get it for free on their website or you can just click the link on the description below. Once you get it, just install it and you are ready to go. Here in After Effects, I imported the two files that I saved earlier and I'm going to select the background file and drag it to this create a new composition icon to create a new composition with the same resolution as my image. And then I will drag this cloud image on top of the background layer. Next, I'll go to Window and at the bottom, select VR Comp Editor. And the VR Editor window will appear and just click Add to the Edit and select the composition from the drop down. In my case, my composition is named Background, so I will select that. Leave the other setting untouched and then just click the button below. I don't need this window, so I'm going to close it, and as you can see, I automatically got 3 compositions created for me. I have the original background composition I created earlier, a background composition for VR2 output, and another background composition but for editing the 360 environment. I'm going to focus on this third composition for now to show you how to navigate through this. Inside this composition, we get the 3D camera to orbit around our background. You can click the orbit icon above to look around the scene, just like what we have in Photoshop earlier. Since this is not a real 3D environment, but rather a flat image converted into a 360 environment, there is an obvious distortion happening when you move around the orbit. And I think that is normal, especially because we have a wide viewport window, but we can make adjustment later on to minimize the distortion. I'll go back to the background composition I created earlier, and from here, I will make some adjustment to the clouds to add a parallax effect when we animate this later. I'm going to select this cloud layer and maybe adjust the duration to 10 seconds and go to the first frame and hit S on my keyboard to show the scale adjustment, and I'm going to click on the stopwatch to add the keyframe. I will hit P on my keyboard to show the position and click the stopwatch to create a keyframe as well. Then I'll move these 2 keyframes to the end, and while I'm here at the first frame, I will increase the scale of this and move the position to create a parallax movement. I'll go back to this third composition to see what the cloud animation looked like. Looks good! Now, I'll click the drop-down arrow of the VR master camera to open the transform settings, and I will add a keyframe to the orientation. And using the orbit tool, I will adjust the camera to find a good starting point. I'm good at this position, so I'm going to end my composition duration to set the endpoint of my animation. This area looks good, so I'm going to play it to see what the animation looks like. This is really looking good. I don't know if you noticed, but because we animated the clouds earlier, it makes the sky more 3-dimensional because it created a parallax effect. I actually don't like the heavy distortion of the clouds when the camera is moving, so I guess I will adjust the zoom of the camera to lessen the distortion a little bit. I'll click the camera options drop down to open the settings and increase the zoom to around 700. Actually, there's still distortion, but I think this is way less obvious compared to earlier. I will also adjust my starting point because I think the movement is a bit boring. I mean, it's just a simple panning of the sky from left to right and there's nothing special about it. So I'll probably start the animation looking at the grass and going up to the sky. And I think that is more dramatic than just panning the sky. I will adjust the Z rotation because the horizon is starting to shift and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to click the stopwatch on the Z rotation at my starting point and go to the midpoint and adjust it to around 31 degrees. And now let's see what it looks like. So far so good, I really like it. But the endpoint still has a tilted horizon, so I'm going to adjust it as well, probably around 11 degrees. I will select all the Z rotation keyframes and right click and then select keyframe assistant and then choose easy ease, or you can just press F9 on your keyboard for shortcut. This makes the camera movement more smoother, which makes the animation look really good. I think I'll zoom this a bit more to lessen the distortion even more, so I'm going to adjust the zoom setting even more, probably around 10,200 pixels. Yeah, this looks way more better than what we have earlier. The distortion is way less obvious, and I like how the camera moves from the ground going up to the sky. But I think I can make the animation even more dynamic by adjusting the camera and adding a new area to look at. I'm going to move the last keyframe of the orientation to the middle, same position as with the Z rotation, and I will go to the ending point and use the orbit tool to go to a different area in the sky. I'd like to go to the left area of the sky and add this to our animation so we can see the sky even more. And to make the movement of this much smoother, I would do the same easing animation to these keyframes. Now, this looks really cool, but it's a bit fast, so I'm going to extend the duration of our animation by selecting all keyframes and holding down Alt on my keyboard while dragging the end of the keyframe to the right side. This is a shortcut to evenly space out keyframes without manually moving one by one. I will extend it around 14 seconds and adjust the work area as well. I will continue to make adjustments to the camera rotation and angle, and feel free to do it on your own as well. You don't need to copy exactly what I'm doing, just feel free to be creative as much as you want. Now, I'll go back to the first background composition so I can create the meteor shower animation. I will right click on an empty space to show the menu and choose New and Solid to create a solid layer. Make sure to set the color to black and rename this to Meteor just for the sake of making things organized. I'm going to move the Meteor layer in between the background layer and clouds layer, and I will go to Effects and Video Copilot and I will select Saber, and as you can see, we have created the default Saber effect. And at this part, I'm just going to play around and test different settings to find the best looking meteor for this animation. If you want to copy the actual setting that I've made, I'm going to flash it here in the screen and you can just pause the video to copy it. But if you want to be super creative, like you want it to have a different style and animation, feel free to explore the settings on your own so you can create something that you really like. Okay, this is what my meteor looked like. Nothing too fancy, just a very simple looking meteor, but it's enough for what I need. So now I'm going to animate this. I will click the Saber name to show the controller of the meteor, and I will move this endpoint here and the start point here. And this makes the position diagonal to the center of our canvas. Now, to animate this, I'm going to click the Start Offset Stopwatch to create a keyframe and move it to the end. And now I will adjust the start offset amount to 100% to hide the meteor. I will move the keyframe at the beginning and maybe move the end keyframe closer to make the animation faster. I will add an easing in to the end keyframe to make it smoother and set the blending mode to screen to hide the black background. And now we can see the meteor is actually blending in our sky. I've already animated the meteor to appear, so the next thing to do is to make it disappear. I will click the End Offset Stopwatch and move the keyframe in between and add another keyframe that is set to 0%. Now we have a complete meteor animation. I will move the keyframes to adjust the duration to make the animation faster and maybe adjust some settings to make the meteor appear more brighter. So now I have the final meteor for the animation, and to create more meteors, I will just duplicate this layer and adjust the position of the tail and the head and offset the layers so they will appear at different times. When adjusting the position of the meteors, don't forget to align the starting point or the head of the meteor to the middle of the canvas. But then again, that is just me and you don't need to follow it exactly. If you want to be crazy with the movement of your meteor, feel free to place it in a different positions and angles. I'm satisfied with how my meteor looks like, so I'm going to see what it looks like together with the camera animation I've made earlier. So I'm going to go to the last composition and see if the animation of the meteor is showing at the exact time when the camera is looking at the sky. It looks like the meteor animation starts too early, so I'm going to adjust it and find the exact timing. Really nice. So now I can see the meteor animation, but it ends too soon, so I will make another adjustment to the timing. I think the number of the meteors are not enough to cover the whole duration of the scene, so I'm going to duplicate all of this and offset it further. And maybe I'll make some more adjustments to the spacing just to randomize the appearance of the meteors. Most of the time, I'm just doing trial and error to find what's best for the scene, and that means I need to adjust a lot of things because I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just learning as I go and figuring things out. And once I'm satisfied with how it looked, then that's the time I will stop. And I think that's one thing we can learn as an artist. I mean, most of the time, we don't know what we want to do. And because of that, we are afraid to try new things. We're thinking that we need to be prepared first before we create something, like we need to master the tools or we need to learn a certain technique before we even begin. But the thing is, we will never feel fully ready. Like there's always gonna be one more brush to try, one more tutorial to watch, one more thing we need to get good at before we start. And that mindset, it kind of traps us because the only real way to grow as an artist is to start messy. And the process of exploring things as we go makes it more memorable and enjoyable. Honestly, most of the things that I've learned came from just messing around. Like this video, I didn't know that Photoshop can create a 360 environment and, use it as something to animate in After Effects. I didn't know that. And when I learned about it, my first instinct is, how can I do it? And even though I've watched some tutorials on YouTube, this actual meteor animation that I've showed you here was purely an experiment and I don't know if it will look good. But I'm glad I tried doing this because now I learned something new while exploring different settings and workflows. And that makes doing this video even more worth it and enjoyable for me. So yeah, if you've been waiting for a sign to just start, I think this is it. You just do it. Start doing the things you're thinking of doing for a long time and keep going. And that's it. This is looking good for me and I'm really satisfied with how it looked. If you find this video worth it and it helps you to learn something new, please don't forget to like this video and comment below what you think about this and share it to your friends to make this video available to everyone. Also, I really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel so you can be updated with my upcoming videos. Until next time, take care.